Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Business Webinar. I'm Jim Williams. I'm the Business Emergency Operations Center Operations Officer, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. As the 2021 hurricane season winds down, we have been reminded again that making preparations for your business is key to recovery. Storms like Ida, Laura, and Ada, and others have wreaked physical havoc on our communities, but it's always cyber season. There are people out there who want to bring a digital storm to your doorstep. Do you know how to prepare your business? October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and as a cybersecurity champion, the LABEOC and all of our sponsors feel it is vital to provide you with information and tools that can help you prepare for that digital storm. And to recognize our sponsors, who without their support, this webinar could not be possible, I'd like to recognize the University of Louisiana Lafayette Center for Critical Infrastructure and Cybersecurity Director, Dr. Arun Lakota.
Thanks, Jim. You all welcome to this cybersecurity webinar. I am Arun Lakhotia. I'm the Director of the Center for Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity, and I'm also a professor at the School of Computing and Informatics. Something that may be of interest to some of our listeners here would be the cybersecurity programs we have at the School of Computing and Informatics. We have bachelors in cybersecurity in two different programs, in computer science and informatics. If you'd like to know more about it, please reach out to me. Thank you much. Bye.
Mr. Randy Gray, the Chief Information Officer for Lafayette Consolidated Government.
Hi, Jim. This is Randy Gray. Yes, I'm Chief Information Officer for Lafayette Consolidated Government. We're proud to be co-sponsors of this event, and it's really important that we get awareness and education out there about cybersecurity. The more we know, we're all safer as a community. So we look forward to being part of this, and hopefully everybody will get a lot from it. I know there's always something you can learn new, so we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. The Small Business Development Center Director, Ms. Heidi Melanson.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm with, of course, the Small Business Development Center here at UL Lafayette, and our organization provides services to our 8-parish region of Acadiana with one-on-one counseling and training to existing and potential small business owners. And of course, we do focus on capital, startup, marketing, and what's particularly fitting for today is our support to our communities with disaster preparedness, disaster recovery, and of course, cybersecurity.
Thank you, Heidi. The Louisiana Procurement Technical Assistance Center Program Manager, Ms. Cynthia Carrier.
Good afternoon, everyone. I had a few slides for you guys. Basically, what Louisiana Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or PTAC, does is we assist all Louisiana-based business, regardless of size or ownership, with everything related to government contracting. That's local, states, of course, Louisiana, but any other state that you want to do business in, and then the federal government. All our services are completely free to Louisiana-based businesses because our funding comes from University of Louisiana at Lafayette. That's our host organization and where our headquarters is. The state of Louisiana, specifically through LED, and then Defense Logistics Agency. We're a statewide program, and you can see our current statistics, the number of contract dollar amounts awarded to Louisiana-based businesses, and the total contracts awarded. And then the next slide has a list of all of the various contracting assistance services that we provide. And I won't go through all of these. What I want to highlight is two. One is the cybersecurity, specifically the CMMC level certification. If you receive a contract and there's a DFAR clause that you have to be cybersecurity compliant, PTAC can assist you with whatever level or regarding NIST standards that you have to be certified to. Most Louisiana companies will be level 1, 2, or 3, with a few of our large companies like Textron that will be level 5. But we can assist you with your cybersecurity compliance and uploading all your information in the database known as SPURS so that you can receive your certification. Next slide, please. If you're not already a PTAC client, here are the numbers that you can call to be a PTAC client. It's an 800 number or our website, and then of course my contact information. In addition to the cybersecurity assistance, I wanted to highlight that we too assist with disaster contracting. We have a document that we put together with the step-by-step process of all the databases, GOSEP, all of the databases in Louisiana, all the step-by-step process for doing business with FEMA, that kind of thing. So get in touch with us and we look forward to helping you. And thank you so much for allowing us to co-sponsor this webinar today.
Thank you, Cynthia. And finally, InfraGard, President Mr. Lester Millett III. Did he get a chance to get online? Okay, well, we want to recognize InfraGard and their support for this function. A couple of housekeeping notes. In the interest of conserving bandwidth and the stability of connection, please keep your cameras off and microphones muted during the presentation. There will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation, so please keep your questions for that time. It is now my pleasure to introduce Mr. Matt Delcom, Deputy Chief Information Officer at the University of Louisiana Lafayette, to introduce the keynote speaker.
Great. Hey, thanks, Jim. And again, thanks for everyone for attending. Welcome again to the Cybersecurity Business event. As Jim said, my name's Matt Delcom, I'm Director of University Computing here, as well as Deputy CIO. So I'm proud to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Jeff McKee. He's Protective Security Advisor at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. And for those of you all who have participated in past events that we've put on, Jeff is always a key part of our offerings. You know, in his role, he supports Homeland Security efforts, serving and advising and reach back capacity to the state Homeland Security advisors. In other words, and he coordinates, performs vulnerability assessments for local critical infrastructure assets, and acts as a physical and technical security advisor at the federal, state, as well as local law enforcement agencies. He's a military veteran, served 21 years in the Navy and Army services, completed his undergraduate in transportation security at American Military University and a postgraduate in Homeland Security Studies at Tulane. So Jeff, thanks again for joining us today. We appreciate your continued support and we look forward to this session.
Thanks. Let me just start with the threats that we face today and every day: digital, physical, and of course, man-made, technological, and hazardous that we all go through every day. Well, they're getting more complex as ever, and our threat actors too are getting more diverse. This is at any point in history. It's more today than we've ever had, and I'll probably touch on some of that a little bit later on. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Right now, it's at the heart of mobilizing a collective defense, basically against with the nation's effort here, especially against cybersecurity, but even physical security as well. So I'm Jeff McKee, Protective Security Advisor. I am one of 3 in the state of Louisiana. So we cover down pretty much. We've got one guy north of Alex and covers the Monroe, Shreveport area. I start at somewhere around the Sunshine Bridge, and I go everything west, including Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Lake Charles, and up to Alexandria. And we have another Protective Security Advisor that covers the southeast area. I'll be talking a little bit more about what we all do here in just a second. But really, I want to thank you guys, the small businesses and the medium business realm that's out here that we have today. I think that it's probably one of the understated ones in the cyber, what we're having in cyber these days. So I want to thank you guys for being on the call today. I want to thank UL Lafayette, especially for inviting me today and presenting, especially during this all important Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So I do appreciate their cybersecurity expert title they gave me, but that's not me, unfortunately. I am a Protective Security Advisor with CISA, but I'm going to have more on that here in just a moment. So for the next 45 minutes, I will discuss. Hang on a second, let me change it here on my space bar. Is it changing? Now it is. Okay, the next 45 minutes, I'm going to discuss CISA resources available to small and medium businesses. It's going to help them better prepare themselves and to meet the threat that they have today. So first, small and medium businesses have been largely left out of the nation's dialogue on cybersecurity. So organizations need cyber strategy to protect them from infrastructure, and customer data needs to be protected from growing cyber threats. So to help address this, CISA has developed the Cyber Essentials Toolkit. And that's going to be the first thing I'll be discussing here in just a few moments. So the second thing is going to be ransomware. This is, in reality, we're constantly frequently reminded of ransomware and how, especially this past summer, the Colonial Pipeline was attacked, and also the world's largest meat company, JBS, also was hit. Well, it's even home to attacks that we've had here in our small and local governments, as many of you guys might also know that as well. So CISA resources on that are here to help stop ransomware are available to businesses as well. So third, I want to talk about training and exercises. So this is essential in preparing the cyber workforce in itself. And it's also for keeping cybersecurity workers up to date on skills and the evolving threats. I'm also going to talk about exercises, because once we have plans and we're all think that we're prepared and everything, if we don't test those plans and see how they work and make improvements on them, they might not work when we're ready for them. So lastly, I'm going to say, as it goes, that we know here is that we don't know what we don't know. Whether you're a business on a budget that's never been assessed from its IT perspective, or it's very well developed and mature, has great defenses, and they test them routine, CISA does offer a wide range of cybersecurity no-cost assessments, and these are here to help identify potential vulnerabilities. So I'm going to discuss what those are and how to get those later on. So who we are and what we do. Within Louisiana and all across the United States, actually, protective and cyber security advisors, they're points of contact for connecting our partners to information sharing sources, providing access to tools and to resources offered for free to help plan for security and resilience, for providing training and exercise resources, for supporting partners, response operations as well. And as I mentioned earlier, whether physical or cyber, we all work for one CISA. We can easily route among us any request or assistance that's needed throughout the state. There's a lot of industry, and there's federal or state and federal and local governments out there that pretty much know us, since we've been around since 2004. We work very closely with our federal, state, local governments, since I mentioned them, and through these partnerships, we've added them to a collective defense that I referred to earlier. So this helps to ensure that we better manage the risk and we increase resiliency using all available resources that we have. So whether it's provided by state, local, tribal, territorial, or commercial vendors, or their own capabilities, that we're all here to kind of work as one. Excuse me. So this is a graphical snapshot of the cybersecurity resources from the CISA's website. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because there's a lot of information available to help you protect and to be more resilient for cyber attacks. And it's all pretty much in one location. So when we were formed as CISA about 2 to 3 years ago now, they took the physical and the cyber resources and merged them together. So if you've ever gone to the CISA website lately, you'll see that there's just a ton of links on there, and you can go down into a rabbit hole clicking on these things and going in every different direction. So just know that it's a very rich and a very large organization of information. Even though we're a small organization, the information goes back all the way to 9/11 and after then we first stood up Homeland Security. So we're here to help guide you through some of that. And if you ever have questions, you can reach out to us. There are several links on here that I talk about every day, and that's what I kind of want to jump to today. So you're going to hear from me out of all these links here that are available to you guys. But I wanted to showcase this today at that cybersecurity website that we have at CISA and all the stuff that's in there. All right, so to start today's session, I want us all to take a look at the Cyber Essentials motto. Your success depends on cyber readiness, and both depend on you. So what do I mean by that? So I'm gonna break it down here for you. So your success of an organization depends on cyber readiness. While your instinct might be to think of cybersecurity as abstract, as a concept removed from everyday thinking about your day-to-day operations, the truth about cybersecurity can't be separated from any aspect of your business today. So these days, whether you're a local government or you're a mom and pop shop business, a sole proprietor, or you have over 100 employees, almost every organizational function that you can imagine is facilitated, performed, and supported by IT, network information technology, from human resources to marketing, to sales, to procurement and customer service. It's almost always guaranteed that you're using some kind of digital platform to do this business. So within that context, what are we seeing here at CISA? It's that cyber attackers are becoming even more indiscriminate with their choice of targets, and they're finding a wider range of victims, including many small and medium businesses. So let me go back to this one here real quick. So what does this all mean for you today? Well, it means that if you aren't prepared, you get hit by an attack, such as ransomware, you may lose your ability to operate or to access your information. You may lose your customers, your customers' trust. You may be forced to spend huge sums of money in trying to repair things, and it's very possible that your business could go under. So to avoid this fate, it's essential that you begin to start treating cyber risks as you would any other operational risk, such as fires and natural disasters and financial downturns. So in other words, you need to start preparing today, investing time and resources in those preparations. So both these depend on you. Cyber readiness, for example, and therefore your organization's continued success, it really depends on you. I'm talking about you, I'm talking about the leadership. I'm talking about you, the leaders. It's a common misconception that cybersecurity is something that is solely in the IT department. We wish it was sometimes, but it really bleeds in both directions. We'd like to think that we can just write a check to the CIO and it gets done. It's just not that way anymore. So as I touched on earlier, cybersecurity has broad implications for every corner and function of your organization. So therefore, addressing it requires buy-in and influence from the top down, and it comes from you, the leader, first. So as leaders, you influence your organization in a diverse and far-reaching way. You define and embody organizational culture. You set organizational priorities, establish these expectations. You direct financial investments, and you safeguard your organizational resilience. It's pretty much the job of owning a business. So each of these roles has a direct impact on your organizational readiness or the lack thereof. So that is why much of this presentation is going to focus on your role. The cyber essentials are for leaders. They're for you in looking at your organization holistically and culturally as all working to one. And you are the one at the top and have to start the discussions. So if there's one takeaway I think I want you to get out of this presentation today, I think it's going to be this. So empower yourself to be more directly involved in cybersecurity decisions for your organization. Have confidence, be smarter in all the issues that are happening today. IT is not just relegated to one department anymore. And I think that businesses and business owners and leaders today need to be more directly involved. So commit yourself to be present, active, take personal stake in cybersecurity, just as you would any other operational activity, like especially fires or bomb threats or doing anything else that would jeopardize the business. So what are the cyber essentials? I've mentioned this, and now let's talk a little bit about really what this is. So you might be thinking right now, Jeff, I get this. Cyber is very critical, but what you're talking about, like ransomware and stuff like that, phishing, you know, all this, I really don't understand it. So me as a leader, what should I do now? Where should I turn to first to tackle this issue and protect my organization? So this is a common question that we get from stakeholders, and Cyber Essentials has been our answer that we wrote several years ago because it was geared towards small, medium businesses. Cyber Essentials are designed to be leadership driven, and they are basic organizational readiness. So what we have designed in the Cyber Essentials specifically for leaders and small organizations for whom cybersecurity is not part of their expertise in their daily functions. We're not, as business leaders, we're looking at all the big picture stuff. We're thinking the technical stuff is getting taken care of itself. But I have recently, personal examples. I've recently been called on several companies in Louisiana that wanted to talk to me specifically. These are leaders. These are your business associates, your CEOs that wanted to find out more. They were doing it on their own and they just wanted more information. And this is where I normally turn them to, is this direction. So there are several features that are that make Cyber Essentials very unique to kind of anything else that we have out there. So they approach it through the lens of the leader with no technical background or knowledge, not directed to, towards a CISO or a CIO. So they're designed to be adaptable, and they're to a wide range of organization types and industries as well. So across cybersecurity holistically, that kind of means across all these organizational silos. We're not talking about the hardware and software configurations. We're talking about plans and preparedness and best practices. So the essentials facilitate dialogue between you and your IT staff. They'll go in that direction, and you'll see here later on. And they also link your organization to resources that are going to assist in implementing everyday, recommended actions. You guys might have seen this before. It's called the cultural web model. I did not design it, but it's been around for about 40 years. And unfortunately, I can't remember who did that. And I can't see the audience. I don't know if you're smiling or not, so hit an emoji or something. All right, so Cyber Essentials adapt the cultural web model to the 6 distinct related essentials that we have developed, or sometimes they're just called pillars. As you see, these pillars are yourself, which we've talked about so far. It kind of starts with you. Then your staff, your systems, your surroundings, your data, and your crisis response. So let's start first with yourself. As a leader, you are at the top of the organizational structure of influence. At this point, you may be saying to yourself, I know this and understand the challenges that our business face, but we just don't have the resources, the time to do that. So my recommendation to most businesses, besides going to the Cyber Essentials here, is to start small and start anywhere, but just start. So make lunchtime, morning coffee breaks, or a section of your team meeting, or standing around the water cooler and just having casual conversation about cybersecurity. That's getting it somewhere. If it hasn't had a culture and you haven't talked about it before, at least getting things going in that direction. So they don't always have to be formal training and lectures, and we're always waiting to do that, and we're going to try to get ourselves trained up to do it and have people to do that for us. But we do want to do this before something does happen, because what we don't want to happen is having these conversations about cybersecurity's do's and don'ts and risks and concerns after a cyber event, or I think even worse, during a cyber event. I don't think that's the time you as business leaders want to have these discussions. So get started anywhere, but get started. So, excuse me. So the second thing is going to be your staff. That element is kind of concerned with the accepted norm of online practices of your employees and your IT directors, your CISOs, and your CIOs. So these are the ones that are on your systems and your networks every day. What do they know? What are you teaching them? What do they think is risky online behaviors or not? What kind of training and all that are they kind of getting at this point? So the idea here is to kind of increase your workforce's cyber knowledge and awareness, as well as your own too. So pass around that interesting, kind of maybe scary article you might have read over the weekend. Look for success stories also as much as you look for the ones that have lessons learned, and start a discussion on these things. Encourage your IT partners, your staff to kind of start with, well, what would we do right now if we were hit with a ransomware attack? What would that affect? How can I help to make sure that we don't fall prey for that at this point? So those are discussions with your staff. Next thing is going to be your systems. And the organizational control systems of cyber readiness culture. So these are your processes. This is the physical pieces of that digital infrastructure that make you operational. So as leaders, you can directly affect this element by learning what is on your network today. Maintain inventories of hardware and software assets to know what is in play and what's at risk from an attack. So getting curious about things like what's a business impact analysis, continuity planning, incident response, and also cyber preparedness. What's needed in this business of operations? What's already facilitated? What do we need to support in this IT environment that we have? It all starts with you getting to know these systems, what it is, sit down. Yeah, it may go over your head, the numbers, the zeros, the ones at first, but dig in and stay with it. So the next thing I want to talk about is your surroundings. So the power structures, if you will, for the cyber readiness cultures. So these determine who has access to your digital workforce, as well as who has permissions to do what. So who's on your networks, who's on your systems, and who's allowed to do what. So for this essential element, it's kind of essential for task leaders to ensure that only those that belong in these workspaces have access to these workspaces. So think of it this way. As a leader, do you often take a stroll, around your workplace? Do you check on safety and maybe closing and checking doors, making sure everything is secure before leaving for the day? Well, do the same for your systems as well by conducting these wellness checks or cyber hygiene regularly to ensure that things are staying the way they're supposed to stay and that they should be. If you have a third-party IT partner that comes in maybe once a week and they patch, they do provisions for new accounts, they update your antivirus, consider another separate entity to conduct a wellness check, just to have that extra comfort factor. So these are your surroundings. These are the things. Make sure you know who's on it. Make sure you know what's attached is supposed to be there. Some of the assessments we've kind of done on the past for these businesses, they were identifying things like, I didn't know I had a network segment that was dark. Why is it even attached to my systems? So those are the kind of things I'm talking about, getting to know what's there, who's on it, and what should and shouldn't be there. So the next thing I want to talk about is your data. This is your lifeblood, so to speak. So this is the information your organization has built itself around. It could be a lot of things in there. Years and years of research and just years of development stuff could be inside this. Without it, you would be lost. It would be one of those critical things that you need to have established. So you can imagine how important this is. I do. So this is your work. It gives your organization meaning. The task of this element here is to make backups, avoid the loss of information that's critical to your operations. So ask these questions and, to your partners and to your staff. So how often do we back up our data? Where are backups stored? And how do we know that these backups are going to work when we go to put them back on our systems? Do we regularly test that? So only understanding these protocols currently in place to protect your data, that's going to determine whether or not you have adequate protections or that maybe they need to be adjusted. Let's see. So the next thing we're going to go to after that is your crisis response, right? We're working down the chain. So in crisis response, here's the story: is what is it going to be in a bad day in your workplace? What story are you going to be able to tell if you get hit by an attack today? Are you going to be resilient? Are you going to persevere? Or will you just sustain significant damage? I hope it doesn't happen. So the outcome of this will be determined by proactive crisis response planning that you do and the preparedness that you are. So this task element is limited. It's to limit the damage that could be caused by an incident and to help you and talk to you more about restoring from this damage and building yourself back up to where you were as quick as possible to avoid any kind of consequences and disruption to your business. So I'm really going to stop here as far as the introduction goes, because I have so much more to talk to you about today. But I invite you to take this Essentials Challenge. Look it up on our website, which is CISA.gov /Cyber Essentials. That's the website. You know, if you Google anything CISA related, anything you want to know, it's usually going to be the top hit. But look at these things, dive further down into these pillars, because I only touched the top of them. There's a lot more information in each one of these that you can still pull out of there and start making a plan for yourself. So download the toolkit. There is one on there that you guys can download. All right. Excuse me a second. So as promised, the next thing I wanted to talk about is ransomware. So as you guys all know and witnessed a lot in our state here so far, is ransomware incidents can severely impact business processes. They can leave us without our information, our data, won't be able to operate, won't be able to deliver critical mission services like our schools and education to our children. So malicious actors, they've adjusted throughout the years their tactics and their time to include pressuring victims and so forth. Payments have gone up quite a bit, as you guys might know. I don't know if you guys know that JBS, this is in the news, that JBS spent about $11 million paying their ransomware. So the monetary values have gone up so much. It's just mind-boggling. So they also do other things besides that. They name shame, they do secondary forms of extortion. So there's a lot of ways that they're continuing to try to get their funds out of you. I want to say I don't know the numbers, but when you become more secure at the upper levels, so I'm a physical security guy. So when I'm talking to my neighbors and stuff, and they're asking about security tips and stuff, I said, well, you only need to be more secure than your neighbor. And because if your neighbor gets hit, he's the one that's going to have all the consequences to deal with. Is that really the case happening now? I can't say, but as a security professional, I would think that if the bigger companies are spending a lot of money on protecting themselves from ransomware, well, what are the attackers going to look to next to try to get funds out? They're obviously not going to go to a small, medium business and ask for $10 million. It's probably never going to happen. But what if they start asking for, smaller amounts, and then they just start nickel and diming lots of small business because they're the easy hanging fruit. So, I mean, I'm always thinking those kind of things. I want to just pass that to you guys and see if you thought of that kind of thing as well. So malicious actors, their attacks engage in lateral movement once they get inside, right? So they target the critical data. They're also going to look at propagating ransomware across the entire network. They're going to look for your backups. They're going to try to delete system backups so that you can't restore yourself. They're going to make it pretty much so it's just a really bad day in the office that day. Making restorations and recovery more difficult. This is really going to be very impactful for a business. So I wanted to highlight the Stop Ransomware, and this is kind of fairly new within the last few months. So this is a consolidated resource and tools, and we called it Stop Ransomware website. It really is a consolidation of a lot of stuff that's on there, but we did add a lot of different tips. And the one thing I wanted to highlight the most and call this out is that highlighted blue right in the middle. It says ransomware prevention best practices. So this guide is really phenomenal. I think they took a lot of work putting in this to make this an audience specific guide for professionals and others also within the organization that want to have incident response plans. So and policies and procedures, and also for how do you coordinate an incident response. So it goes kind of through the full realm as you look through this document. So if you haven't yet begun planning, or you have established a plan for already, and you want to maybe check the response checklist that they have in there, just to see if it might be helpful for you, I think it might be a good resource to take a look at. So download this ransomware guide off the site right here. It's a PDF document. Open it up and have a look and see if there's anything that can assist you there. So based on the checklist, so I want to talk briefly about a couple of just initial things to do, because I always like to pass a few things down, when I'm talking about ransomware. I get asked this question a lot: do I turn my computer off or do I unplug it from the network? Well, here's the first thing you want to do is first determine which systems were impacted, which ones to isolate, which ones, and the reason you want to do this, you want to isolate them first. You want to preserve those infection artifacts and personal and evidence that might be able to come off these systems. We obviously want to catch the bad guy, and we also want to pass more information out. CISA, along with the state, also as well, we develop these tips and things that come out of these IOCs, or these operational characters that come out of an attack, and we package these things and we send them out. CISA sends them nationwide. So if there are new ransomwares, or is there something new coming up, and how that's developed and how it breaks down, we want to be able to pass these IOCs out to everybody. So first off, try and disconnect from the switch if you can. Attempt to coordinate that disconnect if possible. Remember, the bad guy's on the system. He's monitoring things that are coming in and out. He's going to know when things start happening. It may already be set up to do, but anyway, a coordinated kind of pull and get everything off the switch and get everything off the internet as soon as possible at the same time would be a good coordinated attempt. And also, don't forget the Wi-Fi. Disconnect from the Wi-Fi as well, and keeping all your machines on as much as you can. If you can't, and you're afraid that it's just going to spread too fast and you can't get everything off fast enough, well, you have to do what you got to do to survive. Avoid tipping off the attacker in some other ways, like using communications other than your network systems to report. So don't send out emails that you're being attacked, or anything else that's going across that. Use something more out of band, cell phones that make phone calls or something like that, and not using the digital stuff. So after that, well, the second thing is powering off systems only if you're unable to disconnect. I mentioned that already, if you have to avoid the spread. And the third thing is to triage your systems for restoration. This is absolutely where a good recovery plan comes in handy. An initial response plan, a recovery plan to start, who do I need to start putting up and get prioritizing resources back again? I'm ready to come back online. There's some things you might have to have in place, like health and safety, generations of revenue, or maybe critical services. So that's how you want to kind of look at that piece when you get there. I only touched on the surface because those are the initial things, and people always constantly ask, what should I do first? And that's my little pick in there. So yeah, go to the website, explore all these best practices on Stop Ransomware website. That's CISA.gov, Stop Ransomware. Training is near and dear to my heart, and I think in the physical security portions of of all this in the last 10 years, I've hosted a lot of office bombing prevention training courses for businesses, and talking about making and creating business response plans. But also, we're bringing in training from the Office of Bombing Prevention. We talked to them about establishing protective measures, doing vehicle checks, or these kind of things. I've always thought it was pretty valuable to teach people and give them guides and give them lessons on kind of how to do things. We do the same thing with the cybersecurity workforce from the leadership on down. This is a newly established, and I just recently started talking about it, a document. It's a key essential task also that employees and users of IT professionals. And I think I pull a lot of this in here for everybody. So your IT professionals, your leaders, and even your workforce that's up and coming, so forth, and maybe future workforce, it kind of covers all of it. So it kind of works very interactive. So as a welcome getting started, when you start punching through this, it's Adobe PDF that you can download and hold on your desktop and play with it. Once you get started in there, it gives you a how to use this guide. It's kind of start taking you through these areas, like what framework, the NICE framework, for example. You look at that and you say, well, which direction do I really need to go for my cybersecurity? Where do I want to end up? Well, what are your proficiency levels? Where are you at right now? What development path do you want to get on? What professional development training is out there? What CISA has on hands also as well, and also certifications. So it lists a whole guide of different certifications. So I think it's really important. This is a kind of my thought and why I think the training today for cybersecurity that we're talking about is kind of important. So when I served in the Army back in 99 to 2004, I did something kind of crazy, and I worked on computers and network systems. I built computers for the Army and networked them together, and probably something similar to the size of probably about 25-person small business. But let me tell you what was different back then than was today is that we were just IT guys. You know, we were putting in hard drives, we were putting on Windows 3.1 or Windows 95 when that came out, and putting in the memory banks and making sure that everything was networked right, making sure the switch was all hooked up and all the wires were plugged in. We put all these things together and we started working. Antivirus came out, you know, that was signature-based stuff that you had to go on and update it until they got even automated signature-based stuff going. So the threats that were there today are definitely not like they are today. So today you need IT professionals that are trained in doing the hard drive stuff and all that, but what you also really need is IT security professionals. So these are guys that have that extra training on top of that. It takes an IT guy and it trains him how to be security proficient, the newest and greatest of, you know, CrowdStrike and these cloud-based antivirus systems and prevention systems that are all out there now, and you know how to get rid of flat networks like I used to have back in the day, and virtualize everything. So this is important as training. If you don't have that yet, to try looking at it. So this guide was really established for state, local, tribal, territorial government agencies in that sense. But it really, I think you should take a look at this because it overarchingly does look at what are the resources out there today, not, you know, for everybody. So look at the developmental paths, the certifications, and what resources are available as well. I think you'll find plenty of stuff there to pique some interest in training. Let's go to this page. So Stop, Think, Connect. This is probably one of the first things DHS back in the day before we were CISA had ever put together. This was the original campaign for public awareness. And I wanted to highlight this as a resource page, especially for you guys that are in small businesses and maybe less technical background. So it might apply to a lot of your everyday employees working on their systems, you know, that the everyday that's just doing the email and taking care of all the Excel spreadsheets and Word documents that you got. So there are a number of downloadable guides here. There's best practice tips. They can help fill a security need that you may not have yet here in your business. But really what else it's kind of good at is there's a lot of stuff in here for home use. So employees, if they understand this here and they take these best practices back home with them, that's even a better thing for you guys. So probably one of the most asked questions I get for company security officers right now is just this. Hey, I'm putting together in my security response plan or my security plan that, you know, for cyber, that I want my guys to be better at, you know, the little things. And so this is one of the best places I think that you can go to from CISA and DHS right now to look at something like that. Just give me a second. So we've talked about the training piece. That's important, but let's talk about exercises now. So say you spend months and you spend a lot of effort and you put together a robust security and a response plan to include recovery and your impact analysis guide, everything that you've done here. Well, don't just set that up on the shelf, congratulate your team and go back to business as usual. The next step really is to put that through the test. Make sure it can do what you think it can do. So just as training was really an essential element to do, so is testing and improving. You test, you improve, and you do it again. CISA conducts cyber and physical security exercises as well. We do this with our industry partners. We test plans, we test procedures, we enhance that security and resilience of their operations and their businesses. So whether you're small or large scale, you're discussion based, or you want operational based exercises, CISA kind of does a little of everything. We do the planning, plan the scenarios, and help identify best practices and lessons learned. Also looking and discussing with businesses afterwards, how can we help and apply this stuff to their businesses and procedures, and then kind of set this up and do it again until we get better and better at doing exercises. Right here. So I got recently asked and found this out myself. So we are really creating a lot of these downloadable situation manuals. It's a piece of an exercise where if you don't want CISA to do it and you want to grab one yourself and say, I want to do my own exercise. Well, here you go, because there's a whole bunch of them in here. I talked about ransomware, a third-party ransomware vendor. How does that work out? What about vendor phishing emails? So there's a lot of stuff that we've already put together in here. You can go to these, you can download them, and there, I think, there's little zip files. You pull it out, and it's got a complete package of the Homeland Security Emergency or Exercise Evaluation Plan, HSIP, I think is what it's called. But they're all associated with that, and so that is very applicable to all these things. That may not mean much to you guys, but it does for the government, because the government guys on here probably know what I mean. So we offer a large portfolio of these tabletop exercises. It's an off-the-shelf solution, pretty much for exercising your needs. Downloadable, like I mentioned. So here's my thoughts on exercises, because I've done quite a lot of these with my private industry partners, chemical refineries here within the state of Louisiana. Exercises are a crawl, walk, and run event. You start with that crawl, you put the plan together, you kind of work through as much bugs as you possibly can. Then you pull out like just maybe a small group of you. You get together and just talk about a couple of scenarios and say, well, does this work for this? This work for this? That's the crawl phase. When you get to the walk phase, you start getting a little more mature in that. And then you can start making the scenarios a little more difficult, maybe start bringing in a few more other folks too as well. I know our state and our local folks will be glad to help out. I saw Lee John was on here. I try to get Lee to some things when I get these in the area and bring him in as well, because it's nice to have eyes from state and the local agencies as well, because there's just a wealth of knowledge to help bring people along in these exercises. And then you get to the run event when you just want to do something a little bit more all hands on, start bringing in a lot more partners there, and actually doing some things. So that's something that is to be considered as well. Okay, so I'm going to jump into so assessments. So we talked already about the benefits of assessing plans and systems earlier on when I was in the cyber. We were talking about cyber readiness, put a plan together and assess it. Well, now we're going to look at assisted assessments that can help you technically and also with plans and procedures. So as I mentioned before, anything that we kind of do here in CISA, it's no cost to you guys. That's the value to small businesses, I think, because they have limited budgets anyway. However, I want you to keep one thing in mind here, as I mentioned that. So there are a lot of third-party vendors in the state that can provide holistic approaches to cybersecurity. So that means a long-term security partner to meet your needs, and they all have these same kinds of capabilities. I think the best use of CISA assessments might not be for long-term security planning. That's up to that's always up to to you guys as business partners with us. But think about maybe initial assessments at first, or as maybe just to try to get a baseline and score that out. Maybe later using it for wellness checks. I mentioned that, you got a mature system now, and you got a third party that's working on this, and they're doing assessments, and they got it the way you like to have it. And then come in and say, well, I got another third set of eyes right here. I think I might just get one of these no cost assessments to kind of do this and see where we're kind of at. I always like to say it's testing what you know, and things should be the way you know them to be. So there's a broad range of assessments, and these can all be explored by you on our CISA.gov Cyber Resources Hub. So there are a range of strategic that are more focused on plans and procedures. That's the strategic piece of it, the C-suite level. And those are usually better undertaken by executives. And then they range down to the more technical that are best undertaken by technical folks, so like your IT guys that have the knowledge of what the technical stuff is going to do for them. And of course, they're going to need information from them as well. It's kind of what I consider more of a hands-on. So all assessments are voluntary. Each will provide an actionable written report back as well. So there are differences in how these assessments are delivered. And I put these, I think, on most of the slides that you're going to see next, is we're going to walk through these here real quick. So there are differences in the assessments, how they're delivered. We have the cybersecurity advisors. We only have a few for the region, but they do most of the strategic ones. And then we have an organization at headquarters, our national ones that do all the technical ones. So I always forget to put in, so I put in a bullet here for me to make sure I cover this, is the best way for any business to get CISA services is by contacting first one of us PSAs, Protective Security Advisor, or CISA, or CSAs, which you don't probably have any of those yet because we don't have one in Louisiana yet, but we're trying to get one. Or you can contact the state and Homeland Security offices or your regional coordinator, Lee John. And also you can get them through a CISA website. Use the Contact Us feature and then look for Region 6, just like in FEMA, the Region 6, and it will take you to our contact at a regional office in Texas. So I'm going to talk first about the CRR. It's a resiliency review. So this is the top one. It's very strategic level. It looks at critical services that a company has. What are the things that make your business work? What do you make? What do you send out? What data do you have? How do you get it? Those kind of things. They can be delivered usually by our CSAs in the field, but they can also be administered self also as well. So it's a downloadable one that you can take yourself, and you can do this yourself. If you want myself or another PSA or CSA to come and help you with these, we certainly can. We've seen a few of these things done, and we would be glad to walk through this with you. Helps the public and private sector to understand how capable they are related to operational cyber risks. So for example, if you were to have an attack on your system today, what procedures and policies and do you have in place today that show that you're going to be more resilient? So you'll see sets of questions, and then you answer those questions. Questions will be related to standards and best practices. So how you answer those gives you a score. This particular assessment is scored in a maturity model. So it'll show whether you're red, like you've started it, or you haven't started it, or somewhere in between. So it goes from red all the way to green. It's fully compliant with that question, or red, you haven't started it yet, or it could be somewhere in the middle and be a yellow, like, yeah, we're working on that kind of thing. So that's what the report would look like after you get a CRR done. The external dependency assessment is one that we want to look at for our third-party entities. So we have dependencies that we might have, and there's different kinds of dependencies. So you may have one that is electricity or water, wastewater, and how are these things managed? Do you manage? I mean, you're probably passing information across the networks and across the systems, but how well is the system between that? How well are these third parties managed within an organization? So that's what this one does for you. We call it short for EDM. So in this, after this assessment, you're going to get a report that's created, I think, for your use only. So the report's going to have assessment questions and how they were answered. So there's a few here at the bottom to kind of give you a little flavor of some of them, how they're answered. So this is the relationship piece. When we get talking about relationships and how those kind of go, how do you meet them? How do you get these evaluations of controls and risks? How do you do that? What are the kinds of questions you ask of them? What service protection and sustainment is in place? If a dependency can't give you what they say they're going to give you, how do you work on it from that? Without that dependency, do you just don't have it anymore, or are there backups to it? So those are the kind of questions you might see in EDM. So a cyber infrastructure survey, I kind of equate this to the same thing as that CRR, the first one I showed you was, where it looks at your services. So this one specifically kind of takes a single service. It's a lot quicker to do. And you may be a small business and you're like, well, I only have a couple of services that I do here. I'd like to make the example sometimes as like an airport. So an airport, has a control tower, has runways, but it also has runway lights. So without runway lights, it might be able to operate during the day, but during times of bad weather, and in the evening, without that critical service, they wouldn't be able to operate. So what this would do was pick that one service that's the most important thing that they have, and it would do a controls assessment on it. So how well are you managing that system? What cybersecurity are you doing on that one system? What controls are in there, incident response, dependency, and all that is on there too as well. So this is a snapshot that you see here in the middle, what you get back. It's a comparative analysis. So the questions that we would come up with and ask you about that service are the same ones that we ask that are alike. It's apples to apples across the United States. So the more of these that we get into the pot here, for example, then the better assessment we get to find out where you scored. So we score you against other similar like services around the country. And you can see, well, I'm scoring high in this, I'm good here. Or, on this specific example, there wasn't anything really low, but there was just a lot of mediums right in between. Okay, so that's the cyber infrastructure survey. And now I come to my favorite tool. Today's my favorite tool because this one's been around since 2006. It was originally established as a control systems security assessment, and it is still in use today. It's on its 10.4 version. I like this for a number of reasons. For one thing, it's a standalone assessment. It works through a systemic process or review of operational information, OT systems. So these are your SCADA systems, and if that applies to you, but it can also apply to your infrastructure systems or your internet systems too as well. So your IT side of the house. So organizations can assess cyber postures against standards. What that means, when you go in there, there's three different things you can make check marks. You can decide if you want a maturity model, or if you want your assessment answers to come back in a different strategy. You can also check the box to find out what kind of standards you want to be selected by. So when you do check that box, it's going to drop down a list of different types of standards that you can pick. For small business and stuff, you might pick a general one that they have. There's like a universal standards. That's the general stuff. And then it works off a cybersecurity framework. So how do you prevent, you prepare, you respond to your recovery and a response? How do all those question sets that you're going to answer, how do you compare to those? But I mean, these are good. Electric companies use the standards that are out of FERC, nuclear power plants out of NERC, chemical standards out of CFATS facilities and stuff. And there's the general NIST standards too as well, which is where our cybersecurity framework came from. Also, I highlighted in red down there because that's brand new, and I just got through playing around with that a few weeks ago with one of my industry partners. That is a tool. If you just go in there and you say, well, I just want to have a ransomware readiness assessment done on my cybersecurity within my company. So you can check on that. It'll take you to the question sets just to do that. And then it'll ask you all these questions and stuff that you need to answer to find out what your score for a ransomware attack might be. How ready are you for that kind of attack? Yeah, that's a pretty good tool. I think it's timely too with all the ransomware we have here. Like I mentioned, this tool also it's yours. You download it. You go to you go to our assessment website that I think I gave you to it already, and you look for the CSET tool, and you can go and download that. If you need assistance with any of that too, just let me know. I've come on site and walked through these things before with our cyber advisors, and I've done them myself. So let's go to cyber hygiene. Now we're starting to get into those technical things. So cyber hygiene is just kind of what it sounds like. We work with the IT guy and we get a list of IP addresses. They send it back, and DHS will scan those sets of IP addresses. They'll look and see what should or shouldn't be there. They'll look at the vulnerabilities for what they see, open ports and all that, what services are running. We've been identifying a ton of stuff. The state does these things as well, and there are other federal agencies that are doing them a lot now. And the new rule is that if it's critical infrastructure and it's identified that it's critical infrastructure and it's got open ports, and we see in there that one of the vulnerabilities could be an unserviceable Windows system that has been outdated and not updated, then that's kind of important. So these are the cyber hygiene vulnerability scanning that we're doing. We're up to quite a bit now since it started about in FY13. So you can see the vulnerabilities detected has gone way high, and reports are generated. Every single one we do get to report, and the number of customers has climbed quite a bit. So we'll do some phishing campaigns as well. Email phishing basically is the #1 means of initial access into a private network. So a good phishing campaign will assess the behavior of the behavioral responses, at least, a specific target user base when presented with expertly crafted phishing emails, emulated worldwide threats. So what that basically means is CISA will put these things together. They look very real, just like anyone that you would pay for. And you give them a set of IP addresses. They send that off to your business, and it starts making click counts. And you can see on the right there, the number of clickage usage, how it kind of goes up the longer that email stays in circulation. You'll get a report back to talk about the percent clicked, and looking at the relevancy that you see right there. What mostly is very true is behavioral type stuff on these things. I do see a lot of fear, and it's really a fear of losing your job if you don't respond to something that the boss sent you. So they're very well crafted and useful. Web app scanning. This is very similar to the cyber hygiene we had. It runs exactly the same thing. So this is just going to focus on web domains. So if you're a business and you have web applications out there facing the public and have those domains, we'll do the same scanning and look for vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that are being done already in cyber hygiene. There we go. So I have come to the end of what I wanted to present you. And I threw a couple of things down on here just for your awareness. This is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and there's more information, more events that are in the Cybersecurity Month, and that is a link right there. So if you go Cybersecurity Month CISA, it'll take you there. The October 27th Cybersecurity Summit Day 4, it is the last day. And I just looked at it today. There's going to be a lot of good presentations on there. So if you're interested, go see. There's a ton of things going on. Jen Easterly, our CISA director, will also be on there giving a final summit closeout for that. So if you haven't seen her talk before, it'd be a good chance to get acquainted with her. So Jim, I think that's it for me. I'm going to go and turn it back over to you, and I'm at your disposal, whatever you want to do.
Hey, Arun, this is Randy. I think this is a part where we go to the kind of the moderation piece. Is that all right?
Yep. So are you moderating, or is?
Yeah, I'll moderate. So a lot of our small and medium-sized businesses that are in the webinar right now many are probably using a third-party information service provider to just take over, run their IT for them. And so, so Jim, what would be just very high-level things that they should be asking their information service provider about what they're doing to keep their network secure?
I assume that's for me. I'm Jeff.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
I was waiting for Jim to answer. He didn't, so I figured that was for me. So yes, I've actually come into this quite a bit. We have a piece of we have a cyber assessment that we ask some of our partners when we're doing our physical security stuff. And when I get to I have them, bring in their cyber guy A lot of times it's not the same one. It's always a third party that comes in. We would start asking questions about, what kind of backups are you guys doing for us? How can you guys restore? I mean, that kind of information. And I'm sorry, I didn't prepare for those question sets, but I think initially asking about network systems, I have gone to a couple of things where third parties came in and tried to draw out network systems that the owner operator had no idea even existed. So that kind of surprised them, and we ended up trying to help them out with doing our hygiene stuff to see if we could locate that as well. So I think I would just say in general, just getting with your third party provider, get a good set of question sets and understand as a business owner what kind of questions that you would put into a security and response plan, and ask them, what they're kind of doing.
Yeah, very good, Jeffrey. Thank you. I would say, kind of comparing it from what we do is obviously a large organization here, but my question to them might be, what are you doing to protect the perimeter of the network? And that means people from getting in. So, and that's your endpoint security and your firewall, things of that nature. And maybe we could take that and look and compare that to the essentials that CISA provides, right? That might be a very good sort of way to start, right? And also, we talked about scanning internally, for vulnerabilities. What are they doing on a regular basis to, what kind of services are they doing on my network to make sure that they're doing those kind of updates on a periodic basis, right? Because those are two of the big areas I know. From LCG's perspective, we always have a third-party company come and do a security assessment for us, and it includes penetration testing. They try to see if they can break in externally, and they look and see what we're doing internally, and we always learn a lot of things there. And as a business, you hope for them to show you where you've got some things that you need to work on. If you got a vendor that's going to give you an A every time, you probably should looking at another vendor, because they're really good at what they do, and there's a lot of them out there that can help with that. It's something we do every year at this time during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and I think it's very helpful. So, Arun, do you have anything to add to that as well?
I have a slightly different question there. This again, from a small business point of view, especially it also may connect with PTAC. So now, when you have any DoD contract now, you require certain cybersecurity certification. So you got to say that you have certain procedures, policies, and whatever else in place to safeguard what they call as CUIs. And what I'm wondering, Jeff, is DHS CISA has this self-evaluation, the tools that you described. Are those aligned? Would you know if they're aligned with the DoD requirements? So if I go through the self-evaluation, I get a certain level of confidence where I stand with the DoD requirements. And of course, the second follow-on question would be, would that certification be accepted by DoD if I say I'm certified?
The last that I talked with a company is no, it's not. That the standards, even though all the questions set in the standards might be the same, that they still require, they have their own standards that needs to be met by. So we've done those. I mentioned those CRRs and some of the shorter version of the cyber infrastructure tool. I mean, they're really great at testing, and I think they would be great to add to, when you're talking with your contractors, and they add to the discussion that they've done these things and these are some of the scores. But it really helps our assessments kind of help them be able to make sure they're answering at least the cybersecurity framework and the NIST standards, because that's what we go off on. We don't go off the DoD standards. So.
Hey, Jeff, this is Alan Roark. I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Lester Miat lives in Laplace, and his home and their office were both damaged heavily during Hurricane Ida. So he is probably working on his house or working on their office, trying to get it built back together. But I've got to jump off in a minute. I work for the Plexos Group, and we do cybersecurity as well. So that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Alan. And yeah, I want to mention for Lester is InfraGard. I've been a member since 2004 of InfraGard. So it is an information sharing platform. It was first established by the FBI. So the FBI kind of runs it, but Lester's been a fabulous partner with that system in there. He's kept it up and going probably for a long time now. I can't remember when he ended up taking it over. But he keeps it up and going. He's got a great information sharing list. He'll pass information out that from many federal and state agencies. He passes all information that we have here from CISA to as well. So he's got several established groups now. He's got one up north, and he's got the one here in the Acadia chapter. He's got the Baton Rouge and the New Orleans one, and he spends a lot of time doing that. But if you get an opportunity to attend a meeting, which I think there's one tomorrow, they're in Lafayette. So if you don't have that, I'm sure Jim or Alan might have it to provide.
They moved it from Lafayette to Lake Charles. It's going to be at a restaurant there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't remember. I can look and find it real quick. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Alan.
Just to bring up, because I know we just have a few minutes left for the roundtable, was just I think it's important for the small, medium-sized businesses to make sure that education awareness is such a big thing to do with your employees. You know, at LCG, I talk about the fact that it's not just IS&T's responsibility to protect the network. It's everybody who touches it. I know that Jeffrey talked about mock phishing emails with cybersecurity training to back that up. And we just completed one of those here at LCG. And it's just, we're a lot safer today than we were the day before we did that, I can tell you, because I preach it all the time, but you really get to see when you put a really good mock phishing email together, you know, what people, you know, they get busy and they click on things they shouldn't. And so we had a lot of people, they got frustrated with me because they're having to do cybersecurity training right now. But anyway, it's all good. And it's something I just wanted to pass on to those that might be listening. Thank you. Yeah. I'll hand it over to you, Jim.
It's funny because you say that. I got an email a while back from a lady named Kristen Seriaco wanting all this information and whatnot. So I called my boss at Plexos Group and I said, well, she's legitimate. If you don't take it, you'll no longer work for the Plexos Group. And now we just signed a contract with the U.S. Office of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. So now I have to get a DHS photo ID and CAT card. So, you know, we're both kind of working on the same page, but in different directions.
Great discussion, gentlemen. Are there any other questions from the attendees?
Jim, I have one more thing I want to put out. There's no question yet. I usually get a question about who do I call? So I wanted to pass that real quick, but I also wanted to put out there what the state's been doing here, because I've been part of it for many years now. So let me start with just some state initiatives that you might not be aware of. So Louisiana Cybersecurity Commission was created in 2018. And with that, they established and they've built capacity in the state for risk identification and mitigation. They promote cyber awareness and information. The cyber workforce has been created. It's been the educational programs have started to grow. We want to try to keep the cyber educational workforce in Louisiana the best as possible. Has been the governor's main point. Also building investigative capability. So facilitating economic development by promoting cybersecurity, and also there's enhanced Louisiana cyber response capabilities. So I wanted to talk about the enhancing Louisiana cyber response capabilities, which is one of the key things that came out of the commission in 2018. And what has happened there has been what I think has been truly commendable to the state of Louisiana. And I think that's been only done here in the state of Louisiana. First, what it does is it enhances the ability of Louisiana state folks to respond to incidents here. So they have an emergency support function. If you're not familiar with that, it does fall under the National Incident Management System. And it basically is how the government and even industry today responds. And so each one of these emergency support functions has a name or a number to it. So this one is 17, and what it kind of does is it's the response to an incident of cyber incident in the state of Louisiana. So how that kind of, what they mean to do, what it's supposed to do is minimize the impacts of cyber incident here in the state. So the capability exists for both public and private sector. So I'm not sure if anybody was aware of that. The state response activities are conducted to restore and recover all entities impacted by a cyber event to minimize impacts. So here's what you do. If you are a suspect of criminal activity, contact the State Fusion Center. And if you're not familiar with state fusion centers, we have one in the state of Louisiana. There's one in every state, and they're information sharing. They combine pieces and parts. They connect the dots throughout the United States. So all criminal activity is usually reported directly to these fusion centers, so they can start looking at, is this happening nationwide? This is all an after effect of 9/11. So if you do think that you are a suspect of criminal activity, I know you're going to be making a lot of phone calls in small, medium business. You're calling your IT guys, you're going to be calling your third party. But if you get a chance, please call LA Safe, Louisiana. That's the Analytical Fusion Center. That number is 1-800-434-8007. That's 1-800-434-8007. This, whether you may or you may not want an initial response, or you may not want them to come out and do anything for you, but to report all criminal activity in the state of Louisiana through the Fusion Center is the best practice that is there available right now. So wanted to leave you with that. If you didn't write the number down, forget it. Just Google LA-Safe, and you'll come up with that hit in your Google search. So that's it for me, Jeff. So I wanted to add to that. So.
Okay, if there's no questions, this concludes today's webinar. Another big thanks to our sponsors. Without their support, we could not have put this together. Jeff, thanks for your time to present today. Another great presentation. To our guests who attended today, there is another webinar that is focused on critical infrastructure tomorrow at 1 p.m. This will be a fireside chat with Mr. Robert Lee, CEO and founder of Dragos, which is a cybersecurity firm. If you have not registered, you can do so at the same website where you registered for this event. Also, if you have time and are interested, you can register to receive monthly updates from the LABEOC website. Also, we put out updates during hurricane season and any other critical events that are going on in the state. So Jeff, and to all the attendees, thank you for your time. This concludes today's webinar.